I remember the exact moment I learned that the truth doesn't matter if no one asks for it. I was 17, sitting in Vice Principal Marcia Cunningham's office for the fourth time that semester. The office smelled like burnt coffee and photocopy toner. There was a motivational poster on the wall behind her desk. Something about eagles and courage that made my stomach turn every time I looked at it. "This pattern of behavior is unacceptable," she said, not looking up from the folder in front of her. My folder, 3 inches thick by then. Chronic tardiness, excessive absences, incomplete assignments. Do you understand that you're on track to fail the semester? I didn't say anything. I'd learned by then that silence was safer than explanation. She finally looked up, and I saw the disappointment in her face that I'd seen in so many teachers' faces that year. Not anger, disappointment. Like I was personally letting her down by being such a waste of potential. "You're a bright student, or you were," she continued. "Your test scores suggest you should be in the top 10% of your class. Instead, you're barely passing. And when I look at your attendance record, when I see you strolling in 20, 30, sometimes 40 minutes late," she shook her head, "it tells me you don't respect this institution. You don't respect your teachers, and most importantly, you don't respect yourself." I kept my eyes on a spot just past her left shoulder. On the wall, there was a framed certificate from some educational leadership conference. Her name was engraved on a little brass plate at the bottom. "I don't think you understand how serious this is," she said. "This isn't just about high school. This is about your future. Colleges look at patterns. Employers look at patterns. Right now, the pattern you're establishing is that you're lazy, irresponsible, and can't be trusted to show up when you're supposed to. Lazy, irresponsible, can't be trusted. I wanted to tell her that I woke up at 5:30 every morning, that I made breakfast for my 8-year-old sister Nina because our mother Gloria couldn't, that I checked to make sure Nina took her vitamins and brushed her teeth and had her homework in her backpack, that I walked her 6 blocks to a temporary care facility run by a woman named Beth from our church, because Nina couldn't stay home alone and there was no one else. I wanted to tell her that our mother was in a psychiatric treatment facility 40 minutes away, and that the doctors said she was making progress but needed at least another 3 months of intensive care. That the morning routine with Nina took an hour and a half, and that even leaving at 7:15 meant I wouldn't make it to school before 7:50. I wanted to explain that the incomplete assignments were because I spent my evenings making dinner, helping Nina with her homework, getting her bathed and into bed, and then collapsing into sleep myself because I was so tired I couldn't think straight. But I didn't say any of that, because 3 weeks earlier I had tried to explain, not to Mrs. Cunningham, but to my English teacher, Mr. Barry Stockton. I'd asked to speak with him after class, and I'd told him, quietly, carefully, about my mother's situation, about Nina, about why I was struggling to keep up. The next day, I was called to the guidance counselor's office. The counselor, Mrs. Laurie Whiteley, asked me pointed questions about my home situation, whether I felt safe, whether there was any abuse or neglect, whether my mother's illness posed a danger to me or my sister. I realized, with a sick feeling in my stomach, that Mr. Stockton had filed a report, not out of malice probably, just following protocol, doing his job. Within a week, a social worker showed up at the care facility to interview Nina. My sister, who was already scared and confused about why Mom was gone, had to answer questions from a stranger about whether I was taking good care of her, whether she felt safe with me. The social worker concluded that everything was fine. My mother's sister, my Aunt Joan, was technically my legal guardian during this period. She lived 3 hours away and couldn't provide day-to-day care, but she was involved enough to satisfy the system. The case was closed. but the damage was done. Nina had nightmares for a week about being taken away, and I learned that honesty was dangerous, that explaining yourself opened doors you couldn't control. So when Vice Principal Cunningham told me I was lazy and irresponsible, I said nothing. I accepted the detention. I accepted the mandatory study hall assignments. I accepted the disappointed looks and the lectures about wasting my potential. "Do you have anything to say for yourself?" Mrs. Cunningham asked. "No, ma'am," I said. She sighed, a long theatrical exhalation that suggested I was beyond help. "You're dismissed," she said, "but I want you to think very carefully about the choices you're making, because right now you're throwing your future away, and I can't save you from yourself." I walked out of her office, down the hallway with its scuffed linoleum floors and rows of dented lockers, and I felt something shift inside me, a kind of cold clarity. The truth didn't matter. What mattered was what people decided to believe about you, and once they'd made that decision, no amount of explanation would change it. I was lazy. I was irresponsible. I couldn't be trusted. That's who I was, in the official record, in the minds of my teachers and administrators, in the story they told themselves about who I was and who I would become. Let me back up. Let me tell you how it started before everything went wrong. My name is Henderson. First name doesn't matter much to this story, but my last name, that matters. You'll see why later. I grew up in a small city in the Midwest, the kind of place where people know their neighbors, where high school football games are the biggest events of the fall, where everyone shops at the same grocery store and complains about the same potholes year after year. My family was ordinary. My father left when I was 6, just walked out one day and never came back. No dramatic fight, no explanation. He just left. My mother raised me and Nina on her own after that. Mom worked as a bookkeeper for a local manufacturing company. The pay wasn't great, but it was steady. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in an older building with thin walls and unreliable heating. Nina and I shared the 2nd bedroom. It was cramped, but it was home. Mom was fragile isn't quite the right word. Delicate, maybe. She'd always been anxious, always worried about money and safety and whether she was doing enough for us. But she held it together. She made sure we had what we needed. She showed up. Then, the summer before my senior year of high school, something broke. It started small. She'd forget. Things. Miss appointments. Call in sick to work more often. Some mornings, she couldn't get out of bed. Nina would come into my room, scared, saying Mom wouldn't wake up. She was awake, just not there. She'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, and when I'd try to talk to her, she'd look right through me. By August, it was clear she needed help beyond what I could provide. Aunt Joan came to visit, took one look at the situation, and made some calls. Within a week, Mom was admitted to a treatment facility that specialized in severe depression and anxiety disorders. The doctors said it was a breakdown that had been building for years. The stress of single parenthood, financial insecurity, the unprocessed trauma of my father leaving, it had all accumulated until her mind just gave out. They said she'd get better, but it would take time, months probably, and she needed to be somewhere safe, somewhere with professional support. So that's where she went. Aunt Joan wanted Nina to come stay with her, but Nina refused. She was 8 years old and terrified. She didn't want to leave her school, her friends, the only home she remembered. She wanted to stay with me. The compromise was that I would stay in the apartment with Nina during the week, handling school and her care. Aunt Joan would drive up every weekend to check on us, bring groceries, make sure we were managing. Legally, she was our guardian. Practically, I was the one keeping everything running. I thought I could handle it. I was 17, nearly an adult. How hard could it be? The first week of school, I was late 3 times. The morning routine was harder than I had anticipated. Nina didn't want to get up. She'd cry for Mom. Some mornings, I'd find her in Mom's bedroom, curled up on the bed, clutching one of Mom's pillows. Getting her dressed, fed, and ready took time. And the care facility didn't open until 7. Beth, the woman who ran it, was kind and patient, but she had rules. Drop-off started at 7, not a minute earlier. So even on good mornings, I couldn't leave until 7:15. School started at 7:30. It was a 20-minute walk, 15 if I ran part of the way. I was always late. The first few times, teachers marked it down without comment. But by the end of the second week, I was being pulled aside, asked if there was a problem, told that tardiness wouldn't be tolerated. I mumbled apologies and promises to do better, but I couldn't do better. The schedule was the schedule. Nina needed me, and getting her to care on time was more important than getting myself to first period on time. The absences started in October. Nina got sick. Nothing serious, just a cold that turned into a low-grade fever. The care facility wouldn't take her. Policy. Any fever over 99 degrees, the child stays home. I couldn't send her to school sick. I couldn't leave her alone. So I stayed home with her. 2 days, 2 unexcused absences. I called the school, tried to explain. The attendance secretary, Annette Bennings, was sympathetic but firm. You need a parent to call in, or your legal guardian. I called Aunt Joan. She was at work, 3 hours away. She said she'd call the school when she could, but it might not be until her lunch break. By the time she called, I'd already been marked absent for the day. It happened again in November. Nina's fever, 3 days that time. And then I started missing assignments. Or rather, turning them in late, or incomplete. My grades, which had always been solid, mostly A's and B's, started to slip. First to C's, then worse. I wasn't stupid. I wasn't lazy. I was exhausted. I'd come home from school, pick up Nina from care, make dinner, help her with her homework, get her to bed. Then I'd sit down with my own work. But by 9 or 10 at night, my brain was mush. I'd read the same paragraph 5 times and not retain a word. I'd start a calculus problem and lose track of the steps, halfway through. I'd open my laptop to write an essay and end up staring at a blank screen until I fell asleep at the desk. Some nights I didn't even try. I just went to bed, telling myself I'd wake up early to finish the work before school. But I never woke up early. I was too tired. And the mornings were already a race against time, so the work didn't get done. Or it got done poorly, and my teachers noticed. By December, I'd been called into Vice Principal Cunningham's office 3 times. The first 2 visits were lectures, warnings, disappointed speeches about my potential and my choices. The third visit was different. We need to talk about your future, she said, folding her hands on the desk in front of her. At this rate, you're not going to graduate. The words hit me like cold water. I know you've had a rough semester, she continued, but that's not an excuse. Other students face difficulties too. They find ways to manage. You're choosing not to manage. Choosing, like it was that simple. I'm going to be very clear with you, she said. You have 2 paths forward. Path 1, you get serious, you stop making excuses, and you turn this around. You show up on time. You complete your work. You prove that you're worth investing in. If you do that, you can still salvage your GPA and graduate on time. She paused, letting the weight of that sink in. Path 2, you continue on this trajectory. You fail. You don't graduate. And then what? You think you're going to get into college? You think anyone's going to hire you? No, you'll end up working minimum wage jobs for the rest of your life, blaming everyone but yourself for your failures. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to tell her that I was already working harder than she could possibly understand, that I was keeping a family together while she sat in her comfortable office judging people she knew nothing about. But I didn't. I just nodded. "Do you understand what I'm telling you?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Because this is your last chance. No more excuses. No more second chances. Either you step up or you're done." I left her office feeling hollowed out, like something essential had been carved out of my chest. That night, after Nina was asleep, I sat at the kitchen table and tried to do my homework. I had an English essay due, a calculus problem set, and a chapter to read for history. I opened my English notebook and stared at the prompt. Discuss the theme of ambition in Macbeth. I couldn't make my brain work. The words swam on the page. I thought about Mrs. Cunningham's words. "You're choosing not to manage." Was I? Was there a better way to do this that I was missing? I thought about asking for help, really asking, explaining everything to someone who might actually listen. But I remembered the social worker's visit. I remembered Nina's nightmares. What if asking for help meant losing Nina? What if the school decided I wasn't capable of caring for her? What if they brought in more social workers, more questions, more interference? I couldn't risk it. So I stayed silent. I accepted the labels: lazy, irresponsible, can't be trusted. And I kept going, one day at a time, because there was no other choice. The breaking point came in February. Nina got sick again, worse this time, a stomach bug that had her vomiting through the night. I was up with her until 4 a.m, cleaning up, getting her water, changing sheets. I had a calculus exam the next day, a big one, worth 20% of my semester grade. I couldn't take Nina to care, I couldn't leave her alone, and I couldn't miss the exam. I was already failing calculus. At 6 a.m, exhausted and desperate, I made a decision. I called Aunt Joan. "Can you come up today?" I asked. "Nina's really sick, and I have an exam I can't miss." There was a long pause. "Honey, I can't," she said. "I have a huge presentation at work today. Can't just leave." "Please," I said. My voice cracked. "I don't know what else to do. Can't you ask a neighbor? Or maybe Beth could make an exception?" "Beth won't take her if she's sick, and I don't know the neighbors well enough to ask them to watch a vomiting 8-year-old. Another pause. "I'm sorry, I really can't today. Can you miss the exam and make it up?" I wanted to explain that teachers didn't just let you make up exams because you felt like it, that I had already missed too much, that this was my last chance, but I was too tired to argue. "Okay," I said. "Never mind." I stayed home. I held Nina's hair back while she threw up. I got her ginger ale and crackers. I put on her favorite cartoons and sat with her on the couch, her head in my lap, while she finally fell asleep around noon. And I missed the exam. My calculus teacher, Mr. Eugene Patterson, was not sympathetic. "You need a doctor's note to make up an exam," he said when I came to class the next day. "I don't have one," I said. "My sister was sick." "Your sister isn't you. If you were sick, you could get a note, but you chose to stay home for someone else's illness. That's not an excused absence." I couldn't leave her alone. "That's not my problem," he said, not unkindly, but firmly. "Those are the rules. No note, no make-up exam. You'll take a 0. A 0 on 20% of my grade meant I would definitely fail calculus, which meant I wouldn't have enough math credits to graduate. I felt the floor drop out from under me. "Please," I said, hating how desperate I sounded. "Isn't there anything—" "The rules exist for a reason," he said. "If I make an exception for you, I have to make exceptions for everyone. That's not fair to the students who showed up. The students who showed up. The students who had normal lives, normal problems. The students who weren't single-handedly keeping a family from falling apart. I nodded. Okay, thank you. I walked out of his classroom in a daze. That was the mistake, the big one. I should have fought harder. I should have gone to the principal, explained the situation, demanded accommodation, or I should have called child services myself, admitted I was overwhelmed, asked for help finding a better solution for Nina's care. Or I should have given up on school entirely, gotten my GED, focused on survival instead of trying to maintain this impossible fiction that I could handle everything. But I didn't do any of those things. I just accepted it, absorbed it, added it to the weight I was already carrying. I failed calculus that semester. I also failed English because I never finished the final essay. I barely passed my other classes. My GPA plummeted. My class rank, which had been somewhere in the top third, dropped to the bottom quarter. And the judgment intensified. Teachers who had once liked me now looked at me with pity or frustration. My guidance counselor stopped calling me in for college planning meetings because what was the point? I wasn't college material anymore. Friends stopped inviting me to things, not out of cruelty. They just got tired of me always saying no, always being too busy or too tired. By spring, I was essentially invisible, a cautionary tale, the smart kid who threw it all away. And Vice Principal Cunningham, she watched it happen with that same disappointed look. The last time I saw her that year was in May, at a mandatory meeting about my senior year schedule. You'll need to repeat calculus and English, she said, reviewing my transcript. That means you'll have a very heavy course load next year, no room for error. I understand, I said. Do you? She looked at me over her reading glasses. Because from where I sit, you don't understand anything. You had every advantage. You were smart, capable, in a good school, with teachers who wanted to help you succeed. And you squandered it. She closed my file. I've been doing this for 20 years, she said. And I can tell you exactly how this ends for students like you. You'll limp through senior year, barely graduate if you graduate at all, and then you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what could have been if only you'd tried a little harder. Students like you. She said it with such certainty, such confidence in her assessment. I didn't argue. There was no point. Can I go? I asked. She waved a hand in dismissal. I left her office for what I thought was the last time, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a kind of empty resignation. She decided who I was, lazy, irresponsible, a waste of potential. And maybe she was right. Summer brought changes. Mom came home in June, not fully recovered, but stable enough to live at home without patient support. She was different, quieter, more fragile, medicated in a way that made her seem slightly distant. But she was there. She couldn't work yet. We lived on disability payments and help from Aunt Joan. Money was tight, but we managed. And crucially, she could take care of Nina during the day, which meant I could breathe for the first time in a year. I got a job that summer at a grocery store, stocking shelves on the night shift. The work was mindless and exhausting, but the paycheck helped. And there was something almost meditative about it. The repetitive tasks, the quiet store, the clear expectations. Show up, do the work, go home. No complicated emotions, no judgment. I liked it. Senior year started, and for the first time in months, I wasn't late to school. I wasn't missing assignments. I did the work, turned it in on time, kept my head down. My grades improved, not stellar. I was still catching up from the previous year's damage, but solid, B's and C's, enough to graduate. But something had shifted in me. I didn't care about college anymore. I didn't care about impressing teachers or meeting potential or any of that. I just wanted to be done. The guidance counselor, Mrs. Whiteley, called me in once to talk about college applications. "Your SAT scores are really good," she said, trying to sound encouraging. "You could still get into a decent state school. Maybe not your first choice, but—" "I'm not going to college," I said. She blinked. "What?" "I'm going to work, save money, figure things out." "But you could do so much more if—" "I appreciate it," I said, cutting her off politely. "But I'm done with school after this year." I saw the disappointment in her face. Another one who'd given up, another waste. I didn't care. I graduated in June, barely. My name was called, I walked across the stage, I got my diploma. Vice Principal Cunningham was there, handing out diplomas alongside the principal. When I reached for mine, our eyes met for a brief second. She didn't smile, didn't congratulate me, just handed me the paper and turned to the next student. I walked off the stage and out of that building, and I felt nothing. No pride, no relief, just a kind of dull acknowledgement that it was over. I went back to working at the grocery store, full time now. The pay was still minimum wage, but it was steady. Mom was doing better. Not great, but functional. She started working part-time as a bookkeeper again, from home, doing freelance work for small businesses. Nina was in 5th grade, doing well in school, making friends. She'd largely moved past the trauma of those awful months when Mom was gone and I was barely holding it together. Our lives stabilized, found a new normal, and I started to think about the future, not in the way Mrs. Cunningham had meant, college, career, ambitious goals, but in a practical, concrete way. I didn't want to stock shelves forever. I wanted a real job, something that paid decent money, something with a future, but I didn't have a degree, and I couldn't afford to stop working to go to school. So I started looking into community college, night classes, slow but possible. I enrolled in a business program, general studies really, but with a focus on practical skills, accounting, basic management, computer applications. It took me 3 years to get my associate's degree, working full-time, taking 2 classes per semester, showing up to class exhausted but determined. No one encouraged me. No one celebrated when I finished. It was just something I did, quietly, on my own. But it mattered, because it opened a door. At 21, I got a job as a claims assistant at a mid-sized insurance company. The work was entry-level, filing paperwork, answering phones, scheduling inspections. But it was office work, professional, a step up. And I discovered something. I was good at it. The job required attention to detail, the ability to follow complex procedures, and a kind of emotional detachment when dealing with people in crisis. I had all of that in spades. Insurance claims are about rules, policies, what's covered and what isn't. There's no room for sentiment or exceptions. Everything is documented, everything has a process. It suited me. I started learning everything I could about the industry. I read policy documents. I studied state regulations. I asked the senior adjusters questions, watched how they worked, absorbed their knowledge. Within a year, I was promoted to junior adjuster. Another year after that, I passed my licensing exam and became a full adjuster. By 25, I was one of the best adjusters in the office. I had a reputation for being thorough, fair, and impossible to manipulate. Claimants couldn't sob story their way to bigger payouts with me. I evaluated damage objectively, applied the policy terms precisely, and made decisions based on documentation, not emotions. Some people thought I was cold. Maybe I was. But I was also right. My decisions held up under review. I didn't overpay or underpay. I just paid what the policy said to pay. Management loved me. I was efficient, reliable, and I never created problems. At 27, I was promoted to senior loss adjuster, the person who handles the complex cases, the big claims, the situations where the payout could make or break someone's financial future. It was a position of significant power, and I felt it. When someone filed a claim, they were at my mercy. Their house burned down, their car was totaled, their business flooded, and I decided how much money they got to rebuild their lives. I took that responsibility seriously. I wasn't looking to screw people over, but I also wasn't going to let them game the system. The job had taught me something important. People lie, they exaggerate, they hide information, inflate damages, submit fraudulent receipts. Not everyone, but enough that you learn to trust documentation over testimony, evidence over emotion. I was 30 years old when Craig Cunningham walked into my office. The claim had come through the normal channels. House, fire, significant damage. He was requesting a payout to cover repairs and temporary housing. I'd reviewed the file before the meeting. The fire had started in the kitchen, grease fire, according to the fire marshal's report. Damage was extensive, but contained mostly to the kitchen and adjacent dining area. Smoke damage throughout the house. The policy would cover it, but there were questions about the extent of damage to certain structural elements. My job was to inspect, verify, and determine the final payout amount. Craig Cunningham arrived at 10 in the morning. He was in his early 50s maybe. Graying hair, tired eyes, dressed in clothes that looked slept in. "Mr. Cunningham," I said, shaking his hand. "I'm Henderson, the adjuster assigned to your claim. Please sit down." He sat, nervous energy radiating off him. "I know this is a difficult time," I said, keeping my tone professional but not unkind. "I've reviewed the initial reports, and I have a few questions before we finalize the payout amount." "Of course," he said. "Whatever you need." We went through the standard questions. He answered clearly, providing additional documentation when I asked. Receipts for recent renovations, estimates from contractors, photos of the damage. He wasn't trying to inflate anything. If anything, he seemed almost apologetic about asking for what the policy clearly entitled him to. "The kitchen was my wife's pride and joy," he said at one point, his voice cracking slightly. "We just redone it 2 years ago. Custom cabinets, new appliances, and now," he trailed off, looking down at his hands. I made notes. Cross-referenced his contractor estimates with standard market rates. Everything checked out. "Based on what I'm seeing here," I said, "I can authorize the initial payout to cover the structural repairs and replacement of destroyed property. For the temporary housing allowance, you're covered for up to 6 months while the work is being done." His face flooded with relief. "Thank you. God, thank you. I was so worried that, with insurance companies, you hear horror stories about claims getting denied, people getting lowballed. Your claim is straightforward," I said. "The fire was accidental, the damage is documented, and you're within policy limits. There's no reason to deny or reduce payment." He exhaled, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "There's one thing," I said. "The contractor estimates you provided are on the lower end. I'm going to recommend an increased payout amount to ensure you have adequate funds for quality repairs. Sometimes the hidden damage, smoke in the walls, wiring issues, doesn't show up until work begins." His eyes widened. "You can do that?" "It's within my discretion to adjust payout amounts based on likely secondary damage. I'd rather you have too much than too little." I Thank you. That's incredibly generous. It wasn't generous, it was just practical. I'd seen, too, many claims where initial estimates proved insufficient, and people ended up eating the cost overruns themselves. You'll need to come back next week for the final signing, I said. Bring any additional documentation that's come up since we last spoke, and we'll finalize everything. He stood, shook my hand again, thanked me 3 more times. As he left, I felt something. Not pride, exactly, but a quiet satisfaction. This was why the job mattered. When done right, you could actually help people rebuild after catastrophe. I didn't know yet that I'd helped the wrong person. Craig Cunningham returned the following Tuesday for the final approval meeting. He wasn't alone. I hope you don't mind, he said as they walked into my office. My wife wanted to come to thank you in person for being so helpful. And there she was, older, grayer, lines around her eyes that hadn't been there 13 years ago, but unmistakably her, Marcia Cunningham. Our eyes met. I saw the moment of confusion, then recognition, then something that looked almost like fear. I felt nothing, absolutely nothing, just a cold, distant observation. So this is where you ended up. Mrs. Cunningham, I said, my voice perfectly neutral. Please sit down. Craig was oblivious to the tension. This is my wife, Marcia. She's been handling a lot of the contractor communications, so I thought she should be here for the final details. Of course, I said. Marcia sat down slowly, her eyes never leaving my face. She was trying to place me, I could tell. The name Henderson was common enough, but something about me was familiar. I opened the file, all business. I've finalized the payout amount, I said, sliding a document across the desk to Craig. As I mentioned last week, I've included an additional buffer for potential hidden damage. The total comes to $15,000 above the initial estimate. Craig's eyebrows rose. That's more than we expected. It's within policy limits and appropriate given the extent of damage, I said. Marcia was staring at the document, at my name on the letterhead. Henderson, she said slowly. That's an unusual spelling. It's my last name, I said. And your first name? I met her eyes. Does it matter? Craig looked between us, sensing something, but not understanding what. I'm sorry, Marcia said. It's just, you look familiar. Did you go to Northwood High? That's where I worked for many years. I was vice principal there. I know, I said. The color drained from her face. Craig looked confused. You two know each other? We've met, I said, still in that perfectly calm, professional tone. Mrs. Cunningham was vice principal during my senior year. Recognition fully clicked into place for her now. I could see it. The lazy kid, the irresponsible one, the waste of potential. Yes, she said. I remember now. You had some difficulties in school, if I recall. I graduated, I said. If you'll just sign here, we can finalize the claim. I pushed the signature page toward Craig, pointedly ignoring her. He signed, still looking uncertain about what he was witnessing. The check will be processed within 5 business days, I said. Sent to the address on file. If there are any issues during reconstruction, you have my direct number. Thank you, Craig said. Really, you've been incredibly helpful. Just doing my job, I said. I stood, indicating the meeting was over. Craig stood too. Marcia remained seated for a moment longer, staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Shock, maybe, or the first stirrings of understanding. Then she stood and followed her husband out. I sat back down and closed the file, and I felt nothing. The revenge I'd never asked for, never planned for, never even imagined. It had just fallen into my lap, and I'd signed off on it with complete professional detachment. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 3 days later, Marcia Cunningham stormed into my office without an appointment. My assistant tried to stop her. "Ma'am, you can't just—" "I need to speak with Mr. Henderson immediately," Marcia said, her voice loud enough to carry through the open door. I waved my assistant off. "It's fine. Send her in." Marcia entered, closing the door behind her with more force than necessary. "I know who you are," she said without preamble. "I know you do," I said calmly. "We established that on Tuesday." "No, I mean I know who you are. I looked up your file, your school records. I remember you now. The student who couldn't show up on time, who failed classes, who threw away every opportunity." "Mrs. Cunningham," I interrupted, still calm, "what is this about?" "This is about that claim," she said, her voice shaking with emotion I couldn't quite identify. "Anger? Fear? That payout amount. It's excessive. I've been talking to contractors, getting second opinions, and the amount you approved is far more than what we actually need. The amount I approved is within policy limits and consistent with industry standards for this type of claim." "It's favoritism," she said. "You're trying to—" "What? Prove something? Show me how successful you became despite—" "Despite what?" I asked, and now there was an edge in my voice. "Despite being lazy, irresponsible, a waste of potential?" She flinched. "The payout amount is appropriate," I said. "It's been reviewed and approved by my supervisor. If you have concerns, you're welcome to file a complaint with our review board." "I want you to reduce it," she said. I leaned back in my chair and looked at her. Really looked at her. She was frightened. I realized that now. Not angry, frightened, because she'd figured something out that her husband hadn't. She'd connected the dots between the too generous adjuster and the student she'd once dismissed as hopeless. And she was scared that I was playing some kind of game, setting her up for something. "No," I said simply. "What?" "No, I won't reduce it. The amount stands. But I'm telling you it's too much. Mrs. Cunningham, I'm going to be very clear with you," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "The payout amount is based on documented damage, standard industry calculations, and appropriate contingency for hidden issues. It has nothing to do with you, your husband, or our shared history. If you choose to not use the full amount, that's your decision. But I won't reduce a valid claim because you're uncomfortable with the situation." "This is unethical," she said desperately. "You should recuse yourself from this case. There's a conflict of interest." "There's no conflict," I said. "A conflict would exist if I were denying or reducing a valid claim due to personal bias. I'm approving a claim based on objective criteria. If anything, your request that I reduce a valid payout due to our personal history. That's the ethical problem here." She stared at me, and I saw the moment she realized she'd made a mistake. Coming here, making demands, implying I was corrupt or biased, it had all backfired. "I think we're done here," I said. "Wait." "We're done," I repeated, standing up. "The claim is finalized. The check will arrive as scheduled. If you have any actual issues with your reconstruction, my assistant can help you. But I won't be engaging with you further on this matter." I walked to the door and opened it. She didn't move for a long moment. Just stood there, and I could see her mind working, trying to find some angle, some argument that would change the situation. But there was nothing. The claim was valid. The payout was appropriate. She had no grounds to object, and we both knew it. Finally, she walked toward the door. She stopped next to me, close enough that I could see the fine lines around her eyes, the gray in her hair, the exhaustion that comes from years of being responsible and rule-following and certain of your own righteousness. "I did my best with you," she said quietly. "I tried to help you understand that actions have consequences. that you needed to take responsibility. Mrs. Cunningham, I said, cutting her off. I understand consequences better than you could possibly know. I gestured toward the hallway. She left. I closed the door and returned to my desk. And I felt something then. Not satisfaction exactly. Not victory. Just a cold recognition that she still didn't understand. After all these years, after seeing how wrong she'd been, she still thought she'd been right to judge me, right to label me, right to give up on me. She'd learned nothing, and I had learned everything. I didn't hear from the Cunninghams again. The check was processed. According to our records, they cashed it and began reconstruction. I moved on to other claims, other clients, other crises. But I thought about that encounter more than I wanted to admit. Late at night, when I couldn't sleep, I'd replay the conversation. Marcia's accusations, her fear, her insistence that I reduce the payout. She'd thought I was trying to humiliate her, to prove something, to lord my success over her failures. But that wasn't it at all. The payout was legitimate. I hadn't inflated it out of spite or decreased it out of revenge. I'd done my job exactly as I always did, objectively, thoroughly, by the book. That's what she couldn't grasp, that I wasn't thinking about her at all. She was just another claimant. Her suffering meant nothing to me, but neither did any satisfaction I might take in causing it. I'd become exactly what the job required, detached, analytical, unmoved by emotion. She'd called me irresponsible once, said I couldn't be trusted, said I was throwing my future away, and now I held her future in my hands, and I'd given her exactly what she was entitled to. Nothing more, nothing less. That should have been enough. It should have felt like closure. It didn't. Months passed, a year. I kept working, kept evaluating claims, making decisions, building my career. At 32, I was promoted to regional supervisor. Now I oversaw other adjusters, reviewed their decisions, handled the most sensitive cases. The pay was excellent. I'd bought a small house. I had savings. I was secure in a way my family had never been when I was growing up. Mom was stable. Nina had finished college, was working as a teacher, was happy. I'd built a good life, a safe life, but something was missing. I couldn't connect with people anymore. Not really. I'd go on dates occasionally. Nice women, interesting conversations, but I couldn't let them get close, couldn't let anyone pass the walls I'd built. A girlfriend once told me I was emotionally unavailable. She wasn't wrong. I'd learned too well how to function without connection, how to keep moving forward without letting anyone see the cost. Work became everything. The job gave me purpose, structure, a clear role. Outside of work, I felt like I was just going through motions, and sometimes late at night, I'd think about Marcia Cunningham, not with anger, not with satisfaction, just wondering what had happened to her after that day, after she realized that the student she'd written off had become the person who controlled whether her family recovered from disaster. I could have looked her up, could have found out if they'd rebuilt, if they'd moved, if their lives had recovered, but I didn't. It didn't matter. I found out anyway, 5 years later. I wasn't looking for the information. It just appeared. One of my adjusters was handling a routine rental application verification. The landlord wanted to confirm employment and income for a potential tenant. The name on the application was Marcia Cunningham. The property was a small duplex in a working-class neighborhood. The rent was cheap. The application showed she was employed part-time at a retail store. My adjuster didn't know the name meant anything to me. She was just processing the verification like any other, but I saw it, and I understood. They'd never rebuilt. They couldn't have, Not in their old house, not with that payout. Something had gone wrong. Maybe the contractors had cost more than expected. Maybe there had been complications. Maybe they'd used the money for something else. Or maybe, and this felt most likely, they'd never cashed the check at all. Maybe Marcia, so convinced that accepting the payout was wrong, that it was tainted somehow by our history, had refused to use it. Maybe she'd pushed her husband to decline it, to find another way, to prove that she wasn't accepting charity or favoritism from someone she'd once dismissed as worthless. And maybe that decision had cost them everything. They'd lost the house, ended up in rentals. Her career as vice principal was obviously over, probably ended years ago. Now she was working retail, applying for cheap housing, trying to survive. I could have confirmed this, could have dug into records, found out exactly what happened, but I didn't, because it didn't change anything. She'd made her choices, I'd made mine, and we both lived with the consequences. I'm 37 now. I'm good at my job, respected, well compensated. I have a nice house, a reliable car, a comfortable life. I visit Mom and Nina regularly. I'm the successful one in the family, the one who figured it out. But I'm also alone. I can't remember the last time I let someone really know me. The last time I trusted anyone enough to show them the parts of me that aren't competent and controlled. I go to work. I make decisions about other people's lives. I go home. I repeat. And sometimes I think about that moment in my office when Marcia Cunningham stormed in, demanding I reduce the payout, convinced I was playing games with her family's future. She'd been terrified and desperate, trying to regain control of a situation she couldn't control, just like I'd been, all those years ago, sitting in her office while she lectured me about responsibility and choices and wasted potential. I'd wanted her to see the truth back then, to understand that I wasn't lazy or irresponsible, that I was carrying weight she couldn't imagine. But she'd never asked, never looked deeper than the surface judgment. And when I had the chance to make her see, when I held the power and could have explained everything, could have told her about Nina and Mom and all those mornings I showed up late because I was keeping my family together, I didn't. I just walked away. Not because I was being noble, not because I'd forgiven her, but because I'd learned her lesson too well. Actions have consequences. Rules matter more than explanations. The truth doesn't change outcomes if no one's willing to hear it. She taught me that the system doesn't care about your story, only about whether you comply. So I learned to work the system, to follow the rules, to accumulate power within the structure she'd enforced. And when she came to me looking for understanding, for flexibility, for acknowledgement that sometimes circumstances matter more than procedures, I gave her exactly what she'd given me. Nothing. I won. She lost. But the victory tastes like ashes in my mouth, because I'm not the person I might have been if she'd asked one question, shown one moment of curiosity about why a good student was suddenly failing. I am harder now, colder, more cynical. I trust rules over people because people are unreliable. People judge without knowing. People see what they want to see and ignore everything else. The system, for all its flaws, is at least consistent, and I've become an expert at working within it, using it, turning its rigid structure to my advantage. But I've also become a person who can look at another human being suffering and feel nothing. That's the cost. That's what revenge, even passive, accidental revenge, takes from you. You get everything you wanted, the power, the vindication, the proof that you were worth more than they thought, and you lose the part of yourself that might have enjoyed it. I think about Marcia sometimes, in her rental duplex, working retail, probably wondering every single day how her life went so wrong. She knows when it started. She knows why. She saw my name on that paperwork. She made the connection. She understands that the student she dismissed became the gatekeeper to her family's recovery. And she'll never tell her husband, never explain why she insisted they refuse that payout, why she pushed them into financial ruin rather than accept help from someone she judged as worthless. Because admitting the truth would mean admitting she was wrong about me. And people like Marcia Cunningham don't admit they're wrong. They just live with the consequences and convince themselves it's someone else's fault. So we're both prisoners now. She's trapped in the life her certainty created. And I'm trapped in the person that certainty made me become. I won. But I'm not sure either of us survived. The office is quiet tonight. It's almost 8, and everyone else has gone home. I'm reviewing files for tomorrow's cases. A flooded basement, a stolen car, a kitchen fire actually, different family, different circumstances, but the same kind of crisis. I'll meet with them. I'll review their documentation. I'll make my decision based on policy terms and damage assessment. I'll be fair, professional, detached, and they'll never know that every time I process a claim, I'm thinking about a 17-year-old kid who showed up late to school because his world was falling apart. They'll never know that I became this person, this cold, competent, successful person, because someone told me that struggles don't matter, only outcomes. They'll never know that I'm still that kid in some ways, still protecting myself, still keeping everyone at arm's length, still waiting for someone to ask the question no one ever asked, but no one will, because I've gotten too good at hiding behind the rules, behind the professional facade, behind the wall I built brick by brick over years of learning that vulnerability is weakness. Marcia Cunningham taught me that lesson well, and I applied it perfectly. The revenge I never planned, never asked for, never even wanted, it happened anyway. She lost everything, and I won. But late at night, in this quiet office, with case files spread across my desk and no one to go home to, I wonder who really paid the higher price. I close the files, turn off the light, lock the office door. Tomorrow there will be more claims, more people in crisis, more decisions to make, and I'll make them with perfect professional detachment. Because that's who I am now. That's who she made me, and that's the revenge neither of us will ever escape. I'm walking to my car when my phone buzzes. A text from Nina. Hey, you around this weekend? Mom wants to do family dinner. I text back, yeah, I can come Saturday. 3 dots appear as she types, then, bring someone if you want. Been a while since you brought anyone around. I don't respond to that part. At home, I heat up leftover takeout. I sit at my kitchen table, expensive solid wood, exactly the kind of furniture I couldn't have imagined owning when I was 17, and I eat in silence. The house is nice, 2 bedrooms, even though I live alone, updated kitchen, small yard, everything I thought success looked like, but it's empty. I finish eating, wash the dish, put it away. Then I sit in my living room and stare at nothing in particular. This is what winning looks like, I think. This careful, controlled, comfortable emptiness. I built it myself, brick by brick, decision by decision, closed door by closed door. No one can hurt me here, but no one can reach me either. And maybe that's the point. Maybe that's what I learned in Marcia Cunningham's office all those years ago, when she told me I was lazy and irresponsible and couldn't be trusted. Maybe I learned that letting people see you, really see you, only gives them ammunition to hurt you. So I stopped letting anyone see. I became successful instead, became necessary, became the person who holds power rather than the person who needs help. And now I'm here, alone in my expensive house, eating expensive takeout, living an expensive life, successful respected, safe, empty. I won. Saturday evening, I drive to Mom's apartment for dinner. Nina's already there when I arrive, helping Mom set the table. The apartment is small but clean, decorated with photos of us at various ages. Nina's college graduation, a photo from when I bought my house, normal family milestones, captured and framed. There he is, Nina says, smiling, the mysterious brother who only emerges for mandatory family functions. I'm here, aren't I say, hugging her. Mom comes over, and I kiss her cheek. She looks good, stable, medicated, functioning. So different from those awful months when she couldn't get out of bed. How's work? She asks as we sit down to eat. Busy, I say, but good. He's being modest, Nina says. Mom, did you know he got promoted again last month? He's like running the whole region now. That's wonderful, honey, Mom says, but there's something sad in her eyes when she looks at me. We eat. We talk about Nina's students, about Mom's freelance bookkeeping clients, about mundane, normal things, and I feel like I'm watching the scene from outside myself, like I'm not really here. Nina notices. She always notices. You okay? She asks when Mom steps away to get dessert. Fine, I say. You seem, I don't know, distant. Just tired. She studies my face. You're always tired. When was the last time you did something fun? Went out with friends? Went on a date? I went on a date last month. And? It didn't work out. They never work out, she says gently. Why is that? I don't have an answer, or rather, I have too many answers, and none of them are things I want to say out loud, because I can't let anyone get close, because I don't trust people, because I learned a long time ago that showing vulnerability is dangerous, because I'm still that scared 17-year-old, even though I'm 37 and successful and objectively fine. I'm okay, Nina, I say. Really? She doesn't believe me. I can see it in her face, but she lets it go. Mom comes back with pie, and we eat dessert, and I leave an hour later with Tupperware full of leftovers and a vague promise to come back soon. In my car, I sit for a moment before starting the engine. This is my family. These are the people who matter most to me, and even with them, I'm holding back, keeping distance, protecting myself from what? They're not going to hurt me, but the habit is too deep now, the walls too high. I learned how to survive by not letting anyone see the truth, and I never learned how to stop. Monday morning, I'm back in the office. My assistant brings me coffee and a stack of new claims to review. I go through them methodically, approve some, request additional documentation for others, deny a few where the claims are clearly fraudulent. It's routine, comfortable, the work I know how to do. Around lunch, my assistant buzzes. There's a call on line 2. They didn't say what it's about, but they asked for you specifically. I pick up. Henderson speaking. Mr. Henderson, this is Craig Cunningham. I freeze. 5 years. Not a word. And now this. Mr. Cunningham, I say carefully. What can I do for you? I know this is strange, calling you after all this time, but I needed to talk to someone, and I didn't know who else to call. He sounds wrecked, exhausted, defeated. What's this about? I ask. Marcia left me, he says. 3 months ago, she just left, filed for divorce, won't explain why, won't talk to me, and I've been trying to understand what happened, what I did wrong, and I kept thinking about that claim, about the fire, about when everything started to fall apart. I don't say anything. I never understood why she was so upset about that payout, he continues. Why she insisted we couldn't accept it. We ended up refusing the check. Did you know that? We sent it back. She convinced me it was wrong somehow, that we shouldn't take it. And then we couldn't afford to rebuild, and we lost the house, and everything just collapsed. My hand tightens on the phone. I found some old paperwork last week, he says, from when we sold the house. Your name was on some of the documents, and I remembered how strange she acted when she met you, and I started wondering if there was some history there, if something happened that I didn't understand. Mr. Cunningham, I'm not asking you to tell me anything, he interrupts. I know that wouldn't be appropriate. I guess I'm calling to say thank you for trying to help us, for doing your job right, even when my wife made it complicated, and to say I'm sorry if she caused you any trouble. I close my eyes. This man lost everything because his wife couldn't admit she'd been wrong about me, and he's apologizing to me. You don't need to apologize, I say quietly. You didn't do anything wrong. Neither did you, he says. I know that now. I should have known it then. We sit in silence for a moment. Are you okay? I ask, and I'm surprised by the genuine concern in my voice. I will be, he says. Eventually, I'm renting a small place, working, figuring things out. It's not the life I thought I'd have at 58, but it's okay. I'll be okay. I'm glad, I say, and I mean it. Thank you for taking my call, he says. I'll let you get back to work. He hangs up. I sit there for a long time, phone still in my hand, staring at nothing. Craig Cunningham will be okay. He sounded beaten down, but resilient. He'll rebuild. Marcia, I don't know about Marcia. I don't know if she'll ever be okay. And me? I'm 37 years old. I'm successful. I have money, status, power. I have everything I thought I wanted. And I'm so fucking lonely I can barely breathe sometimes. That's the cost. That's what winning took from me. I learned the rules. I followed them perfectly. I built a fortress of competence and detachment that no one can penetrate. And now I'm trapped inside it. Marcia Cunningham destroyed her own life rather than admit she was wrong about me. And I destroyed mine, proving she was wrong. We both lost. The only difference is that my loss looks like success from the outside. I don't process any more claims that day. I just sit in my office thinking about Craig's phone call, about Marcia's decision to refuse help rather than accept it from someone she judged, about the cascade of consequences that decision created, about how my decision to never trust anyone, never be vulnerable, never let people see me, that created its own cascade. Around 5, I leave the office, drive home, but instead of going inside, I sit in my car in the driveway. I could change this. I could choose differently. I could call that woman I went on a date with last month, the one who seemed genuinely interested, the one I pushed away because she was asking too many questions about my life. I could let Nina in, really in, let her see how lonely I am. I could find a therapist, work through this, figure out how to trust again. I could stop being the person that 17-year-old had to become in order to survive. I could, but I won't, because the habits are too deep, the walls too high, the fear too fundamental, because I learned the lesson too well. Vulnerability is danger. Trust is weakness. Showing people who you really are just gives them power to hurt you. Marcia Cunningham taught me that, and I can't unlearn it. So I'll keep being successful, keep being competent, keep making decisions about other people's lives while keeping everyone out of mine. I'll keep winning, and I'll keep paying the price. I'm walking to my door when my phone rings again. Unknown number. I almost don't answer, but I do. Henderson speaking. This is Marcia Cunningham. My entire body goes cold. Mrs. Cunningham. I know I shouldn't be calling you, she says. Her voice is different than I remember, smaller, defeated. I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but I needed you to know that I understand now. What I did to you, how wrong I was. I don't respond. I found your school file, she continues. A few years ago, I went back through old records, trying to understand why I remembered you so clearly, and I found the social worker's report about your mother, about your sister. My jaw clenches. I didn't know, she says, and now she's crying. I didn't know what you were dealing with. I never asked. I just assumed you were lazy, irresponsible, wasting your potential, and I was so certain I was right. So certain that all you needed was discipline and tough love and high standards. Why are you calling me? I ask, my voice flat. Because I destroyed my life to avoid admitting I was wrong about you, she says. Because I saw your name on that paperwork and I panicked. I thought you were playing some game, trying to humiliate me, so I refused the money. I convinced Craig we shouldn't take it, and we lost everything. That was your choice, I say. I know. God, I know. But I wanted you to understand that I know now. I know what I did to you, how I failed you, how I should have asked questions instead of making judgments. Mrs. Cunningham, I don't know what you want from me. I don't want anything. She interrupts. I just wanted you to know that you were right. About everything. About me. About how the system fails people. About how people in power make assumptions without understanding. I'm standing in my driveway, phone pressed to my ear, and I feel something cracking inside me. I was wrong, she says, and you won. You became successful, powerful, everything I said you'd never be, and I lost everything. My career, my marriage, my home, and I deserve it. I know I deserve it. Stop, I say. But I wanted you to know that I see you now. I see what you did, how hard you worked, how much you carried, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I never saw it when it mattered. Stop, I say again, louder. But she keeps talking, crying, apologizing, and something in me just breaks. I don't forgive you, I say, and my voice is shaking. I don't forgive you, and I don't accept your apology. You didn't just fail to help me. You made everything harder. You looked at a kid who was drowning, and you blamed him for not swimming better. And you know what? I survived anyway. I succeeded anyway. I won anyway. But I stop, 'cause I can't say it, can't admit it out loud. You're what? She asks softly. I'm empty, I hear myself say. I won. I have everything I thought I wanted, and I'm so fucking empty, I don't even recognize myself anymore. Silence on the other end. You taught me that vulnerability is weakness, I continue, and now I can't stop the words. That trust is foolish, that letting people see you is dangerous, and I learned it so well that I can't unlearn it, even when I want to, even when I'm so lonely I can't breathe. That's not what I meant to teach you, she whispers, but that's what I learned. So congratulations, Mrs. Cunningham. You were right about one thing. Actions have consequences. Mine do, yours do, and we both get to live with what we created. I hang up, and I stand in my driveway, phone in my hand, shaking. Then I do something I haven't done in years. I cry. Not quiet, controlled tears, but deep, wrenching sobs that come from somewhere I've kept locked away since I was 17 years old. I cry for the kid who needed help and didn't get it. I cry for the man who learned not to need anyone. I cry for all the years of building walls and calling it strength. And I cry because I don't know how to stop being this person, even though it's killing me. Eventually, I go inside. I sit on my expensive couch in my expensive house, and I stare at the wall. Marcia called to apologize, to admit she was wrong. The vindication I never asked for, showing up years too late. And it doesn't help. It doesn't change anything, because the damage is already done, to her, to me, to both of us. We're both prisoners of that moment when she decided I was lazy instead of struggling. She lost her career, her marriage, her home, and I lost myself. The person I might have been if someone had just asked one question. I won the battle, but we both lost the war. It's late now, past midnight. I should sleep. I have work tomorrow, claims to process, decisions to make. But I keep thinking about that phone call, about Marcia's tears, her apology, her admission that she was wrong. Part of me wants to call her back, to tell her I understand, to release her from the guilt she's carrying, but I won't. Not because I'm cruel, not even because I'm angry, but because forgiveness would be a lie. I don't forgive her. I can't. She stole something from me that I'll never get back. She taught me lessons I can't unlearn, and her apology, her suffering, her destroyed life, none of that gives me back what I lost. So we're even in the cruelest way possible. She took my trust, my openness, my ability to connect, and I took her certainty, her righteousness, her comfortable life. Morning comes, I get up, shower, dress, make coffee, I drive to work, I sit at my desk, I review claims, a family whose basement flooded, a teenager's stolen car, an elderly couple whose roof collapsed in a storm. I evaluate each case objectively, document the damage, apply the policy terms, make my decisions. I'm good at this, maybe the best in the region. I help people rebuild their lives after disaster, but I can't rebuild my own. And maybe that's fitting. Maybe that's the universe's sense of justice. I learned how to work within the system, how to accumulate power, how to make decisions that affect people's futures. But I never learned how to be human again after I had to stop being human to survive. That's the price of winning. That's what revenge costs, even when you didn't ask for it. Even when it just falls into your lap, you get everything you wanted, and you lose everything that matters. The work day ends. I drive home. My phone rings. Nina. Hey, I answer. You okay? She asks. You were weird. At dinner on Saturday. I'm fine. Liar, what's going on? I almost tell her. Almost let her in. Almost admit that I'm drowning in success and suffocating from loneliness. But the habit is too strong. Just work stuff, I say. Stressful week. You can talk to me, you know, about anything. I'm your sister. I know, thanks. Mom's worried about you too. She thinks you work too much, that you're isolating yourself. I'm not. You are, she interrupts gently. And we want to help, but we can't if you won't let us in. I close my eyes. I appreciate it, I say. Really, but I'm okay. Another lie, she sighs. Okay, but I'm here if you change your mind. I know. Love you. Love you too. She hangs up, and I sit in my car in my driveway, just like last night, unable to make myself go inside. This is what winning looks like. This is what I built. This perfect, isolated, untouchable success. And I hate it. But I don't know how to destroy it without destroying myself. So I'll just keep going, keep winning, keep being successful and respected and utterly alone. Because that's what Marcia Cunningham taught me. That's the lesson I learned too well to forget. Rules matter more than people. Power matters more than connection. Success matters more than happiness. I learned it, I mastered it, and now I'm trapped in it, forever. I'm 37 years old, I won, and I'll spend the rest of my life paying for it. That's the truth, that's the cost. That's the revenge that destroyed us both, and there's no escape, not for her, not for me. Just two people, forever changed by a moment when someone chose judgment over curiosity. She lost everything trying to avoid admitting she was wrong. I lost everything proving she was wrong. and the universe looks at both of us and says, "This is justice. This is what you both deserved. This is the price of certainty, of cruelty, of building walls instead of bridges, and we pay it. Every single day, for the rest of our lives. I won. God help me, I won, and I wish I hadn't." Stories like this happen more often than we think. Subscribe if you want to hear the ones that usually stay unspoken. And if this story made you pause, a like helps the channel grow.